I'm Travis Walker with the Walker Way podcast. We're here today in Stuart, Florida with the law offices of Travis R. Walker, talking about important issues, important legal issues. And here at the law offices of Travis R. Walker, human trafficking is a huge issue. And here today with me is Jim Oster. He's an amazing paralegal with the office, really helping out with the trafficking work, helping vet the clients, helping understand their story, helping develop their story, and helping to bring justice for these victims. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. And I'm glad that we're able to help these people who have been victimized and taken advantage of, most of them for all of their adult life. Some of them even beginning when they were young children as well. And so the fact that we can help them not only legally, but get them reincorporated into society and all of the other things that we can extend to these victims is wonderful. It's very gratifying to me.
No, 100%. And yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I take away from it is it's just good, honest legal work and bringing justice for these clients who've been through so much. And I mean, we were talking about it a little bit before we got on the air, but that, a lot of it's, relationship based, drug abuse, cults, there's a range of things, but there's also a similar pattern, right? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, is that the victims, a lot of them became victimized when they were very young unfortunately by family members, but the people that they trusted.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them then became, as they grew up in that environment, became subject to mind control and other types of abuse and intimidation from those people who had power over them.
Yeah.
And that's how they become more, subject to being victimized. Then when they get involved in drugs and become addicted to drugs and rely on their trafficker for the drugs, that's when the spiral steps into prostitution and the abuse and the physical abuse and some of the horrible stories that we're hearing from these victims.
Yeah, and we're seeing like a lot of, I mean, obviously hotels and motels are being involved, but it's a lot of single family homes. It's just about anywhere that we're seeing. It's a wide, broad range, and I think us as being involved in the law, we know that there's an MDL. They try to do a multi-district litigation for hotels and motels, but trafficking is like so large and robust. I think what those judges saw was that this isn't something that you can just kind of easily fit into a pie and then go after somebody. And is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and that's what happened with the MDL. That's correct. Was that there were just too many different types of circumstances to be able to address them all in one particular case, because you've got those that were victimized from family members, and then those who were victimized in drug cartels and all of that on the plaintiff side, and then the defendants. You have a whole myriad of potential defendants from Salesforce and Backpage and the other websites that people have been able to go after, where they've been trafficked on those websites down to the locations where they were actually victimized, the hotels and motels.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit, I think, but, I think, those patterns are very similar. And, you continue to have that same control and manipulation that goes on. And it's just, one of the things that, people often probably are thinking in the back of their head is, why isn't this victim escaping? Why aren't they going out and, running out to the police, or why aren't they going out and calling the trafficking hotline when they get a second? And it's just not that easy, right?
No, it's not. And what we find is we talk about that with them as to when did they get out and how did they get out of that lifestyle that they were entrapped in. A lot of it has to do with the drug addiction. Mm-hmm. Some of our victims, when they got out of treatment in jails and they were arrested, put in jail, put in treatment, get out of treatment, they only have one phone number. They have no money. They have nobody to talk to.
Yeah.
The only number they have is their former trafficker, who's going to then fix them up with some drugs, which they're desperately in need of.
Sure.
And they fall right back into the same cycle again. And that's what we're finding. The same thing with people who run away from a cult.
Yeah.
They don't know anybody else. And when they're in trouble, they go back to what they know. It's safer there than the unknown.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a challenging practice area, I think, for a few different areas. And there's not a lot of lawyers that I know. We've talked to a number of them, mm-hmm. and we're networking with them. And by this communal effort, I think we can create this great unified effort against this evil that's happening. I mean, and I'm going to put you on the spot again, but I have my own thoughts as to why some lawyers don't want to do this work. I mean, but what are kind of your thoughts as to why more people aren't fighting this fight?
Well, a lot of times, I think lawyers, in law firms, we have to look at the bottom line too. So how are we going to make some money from this?
Hmm.
And these cases are going to be very expensive to litigate. They've taken a tremendous commitment from this firm to do that.
Yep.
We're going to be advancing a lot of time and money and effort before there's any potential for recompensation for our client or for the firm.
Yeah.
And so a lot of firms don't want to do that unless you've got a real easy target. Now, the fact that we've been able to bring in some of the hotels and motels and institutions that have insurance and have funds that are available is opening the door to some more compensation for our clients.
And I agree with you 100%. I think that it's a bottom line issue. And then I also think that it's for some lawyers, it may seem like dirty work because, unfortunately for a lot of these plaintiffs, like they've been through a lot. They've had drug charges, they've had prostitution charges, they've had a sordid past, and a lot of it's not their fault. I mean, they got caught into the trafficking ring, and with trafficking comes drugs, with trafficking comes theft, with trafficking comes all these different issues. Fortunately, the Florida statutes allow for people who've been trafficked to expunge certain their records, and we're happy to help them along that path and process. But having gone to educational conferences and that type of thing, I've learned that it's not an easy practice, but it's a good practice to do because it is expensive. It is a long fight sometimes, but it's also something that's really rewarding in the end. And I mean, we all are brought to tears whenever we're talking to our clients about what they've really been through and how awful the situation is. And I mean, like we got clients who've been in cults. We've got clients who've been trafficked by their mom. We have clients who've been trafficked by a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it kind of runs the racket, right? I mean, that's what we're seeing, right?
Yeah, and I think there's another distinction that you brought up in terms of why attorneys will maybe shy away from this, in that the victims have only been dealing with criminal lawyers,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with the prostitution, drugs, and things like that.
True.
And this is a civil matter.
Yeah.
And criminal lawyers don't want to get into civil law,
No.
and civil lawyers don't like getting into the criminal matters.
No.
And so there's that, and we're crossing that divide back and forth in this firm.
Correct.
Because we do handle both.
We do handle both, and we can work that. And I always use the example for most lay people is that in the O.J. Simpson trial, O.J. Simpson was found not guilty of murder at a criminal level because you have beyond a reasonable doubt. But on the civil level, you can seek justice easier because the level is preponderance of the evidence. It's it's a much lower standard to have to prove because the criminal justice system is just built that way. So there's a lot of trafficking victims out there who really haven't felt like they've gotten justice from the criminal justice system. This provides them an avenue to seek justice in a different way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of them, and they don't even know about this until they're in some type of rehabilitation program of their own. I mean, their eyes are sort of opened up to, hey, I can go after these people for what they've done to me.
Yeah.
But that's part of their recovery process too,
Mm-hmm.
is getting their mind to the position where they even can accept retribution against these people.
True. Yeah, and I spoke recently with somebody who's being actively trafficked, and that's a very, very sensitive time. It's very sensitive. I think one of the other things that, I mean, I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 17 years, and one of the things that I know, having worked with lots of lawyers, is sometimes we can be very conservative and callous and black and white, even though we live in the gray. And working with plaintiffs who've had challenges in their past, can be difficult. But I think one of the things that we really preach here at the Law Office of Travis R. Walker is compassion and advocacy for our clients. And so I think one of the reasons why we're having a lot of clients gravitate towards us is because we're not going to judge you. We understand that you've gone through some difficult stuff. We're here with compassion. We're here with love. And, sometimes that doesn't come across for an attorney. They're just, and I don't mean to stereotype attorneys in any way, but I think that something that we bring to the table a lot more is non-judgmental compassion and understanding for what this person has gone through.
Yeah. We're not worried here about, I've spent 45 minutes with you on this phone call and we need to get to the bottom line.
Right.
I mean, last night, Jeff and I were on a phone call for 3 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
But we had to talk about the whole situation to get
Yes.
the facts out and go back and forth. And the client really felt vindicated by being able to get all of that off of her chest.
Yes.
And we were able to really understand what really went on with this person. So
yeah, and I think it's a great service because we always talk attorneys and counselors at law, and sometimes we end up being counselors in a different way, which is great because they're able to help talk their story through. They help to kind of work through what they're going through, and at the same time really kind of working their way towards justice in a different way. And I think that's a beautiful thing that we do for them. And it's such a tragedy what they go through, and that we can really work with them to work through that. And I mean, so what you're kind of telling, I mean, when we're working these cases up, we're spending hours and hours, oftentimes on the phone with them, because sometimes either their trafficking past is so long. I'm thinking of one in particular where it was decades long, and there was multiple locations and multiple traffickers and all kinds of facts that we had to vet out. And it's not like an auto accident per se, where you're just like the light was red, the guy ran through the intersection, boom, we got a case or whatever. It requires a lot of discussion, a lot of vetting, a lot of hand holding. And one of the things that I often talk to our clients when they're potential clients is, I'm here to listen to you. I want you to feel safe, and I want you to feel that I'm not going to rush you on this. When you're ready to tell your story, I'm ready to hear it, and we can work out to see if there's a good case to work on. And I think that that's something that we bring to the table, and we have a great intake department. Brianna, Jade, all of them there, they do a great job of bringing the clients on board because of that inviting atmosphere of compassion and love. And I think it's a huge part of that because yeah, I mean, hours and hours. We've recently filed a 152-page complaint, right? I mean, that's a big complaint. I mean, most complaints aren't near to that size, right?
of course not. Most an auto accident case is 3 pages typically. But one of the things that we start off with in my interviews with these clients is the first thing I ask them is, where are you and are you safe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And are you in what's your life situation? Are you working? And those kind of questions, just to know that, okay, here's where we're starting from with this person.
Yes.
At least they're in a safe place, because we do have now established so many connections with so many resources around the state to help these people.
Yes.
And so to me, that's step one. Okay, let's make sure you're safe, and then let's talk about how we can help you.
Right. No, yeah, 100%. I mean, it's definitely a safety issue first, the client-centered focus on making sure they're taken care of. And because they may be actively trafficked, it may be out and safe in a good place. And it doesn't necessarily matter whether, because we have some cases where a criminal conviction of the traffickers and other Johns have taken place, right? But we also have cases where there's been no criminal convictions, right?
Well, the woman I spoke to last night, when I asked her that question, she goes, "I am now, but he can find me."
Oh, really?
So, I mean,
yeah.
So she's not safe.
Yeah, no, she's not safe. She's not. No, she's not safe, and it's the same. And I had a conversation yesterday as well, where it's like, I'm in a place right now, but they know where I'm at, and there's no certainty that there's not something more isn't going to happen,
right.
And so it's a very guarded conversation, rightfully so, and working through the process. But for those people who have been trafficked or know somebody who's been trafficked, you don't have to have a criminal conviction in place or a criminal action done over and done with. I mean, it can help, don't get me wrong, because the state attorney's office has done a bunch of work and the law enforcement has done a bunch of work. But the problem is so overwhelming sometimes that the state attorney's office and law enforcement just, they can't get to it, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that if someone who's watching this or listening to this, they've been trafficked, or they know somebody who's been trafficked, there doesn't have to be any type of criminal prosecution or conviction of anybody to start a civil case.
Right. Oh, absolutely not. No, they're two separate tracks, actually.
Yeah.
And in fact, because the statute of limitations has been opened up for the minors who are sex trafficked and the other victims, that doesn't correspond with the criminal statute of limitations at all. So some of those statutes of limitations may have already run on the criminal matters, but we can still bring a civil action.
And it's mostly in federal statute. I mean, I think there's state laws and there's other things to go after, but particularly there's a federal statute that basically says, if you profited off of trafficking, you can be held liable for trafficking. Is that right?
Right. And that's how we're able to go after any of those other companies who benefited by keeping a blind eye to what was going on at their facilities, like the hotels and the motels.
Sure. And I mean, the hotels and motels, I mean, we've heard stories about guys lined up outside of a door, the security guards being paid off, the front desk being paid off. I mean, just complicity on a whole nother level. And, it's not, I mean, those are the signs of there's so many signs of what's going on. And these hotels and motels, don't get me wrong, there's good hotels and motels who are doing the right work and everything, but there's plenty of hotels and motels who are just looking to fill some rooms, get paid extra money, and profit off of somebody else's tragedy.
Exactly right.
And what we're seeing more and more of that is across the board. And and another thing that we're looking at obviously is people who are using rental homes or single family homes or something like that, or massage parlors. It doesn't just have to be hotels and motels. I mean, people are trafficked just about anywhere, and those locations too may be places where we're going after. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And now, so we've now opened up our eyes to looking at some of those other facilities as well on behalf of the municipalities that are also they have damages as well because of the increased police presence, all the calls for service that go on there, costs of the hospital, all of the expenses that we all are paying for out of our tax dollars.
Yep.
And so the cities now have a right to go after those same people who are financially benefiting from the illegal activity and this morally reprehensible activity that's going on.
100%. No, and we recently got retained by the city of Palm Bay in Brevard County, Florida, to help them out with that same issue. I mean, using the same strategies that we use in the opioid litigation to go after public nuisance and negligence and fraud and those types of things, even RICO statutes to go after some of these organizations and individuals for knowingly and abetting trafficking and profiting off of it. And we just know that there's just having partnered with a number of anti-trafficking organizations, we just know that issue is huge and is out there. And I mean, can you talk a little bit more about like how the process works as far as developing the case and anything else that someone who's thinking about maybe becoming a potential client of ours or something like that, what they can anticipate?
So, well, in terms of being able to prove a case against one of the hotels that they were being victimized at. Mm-hmm. So we look at these different badges that anybody knew or should have known would indicate that trafficking is going on their premises.
Yep.
So like you just mentioned, a line of men going in and out of a room every 20 minutes.
It's crazy.
Scantily clad young women paying cash for rooms.
Yep.
Getting rooms for 3 or 4 days at a time with no luggage. Asking for rooms by the back door so that people aren't being seen. I mean, there's
or no house cleaning for like 10 days straight. I mean, all these different things stack up. Right?
Exactly right. And in our complaint, we list them out. I mean, these are the things that go on that you could have or should have seen that were going on in these particular places. And those are it's sort of it's ironic in a way maybe, but the hotels, they all have a code of conduct that deals with trafficking that they all signed on to.
Yeah.
A lot of them have their own programs about, training about trafficking and Wyndham donates rooms to victims of trafficking and all like that. And that's all well and good because they're making a whole lot more money on the rooms that are being rented out, these Days Inn by Wyndham and all these other cheap motels that are being paid cash and all, and like that they're making their money and they're profiting from it. And so I think we ran the numbers that in what they donated in 1 year, claiming all of this great charitable contribution that they made to thwarting trafficking, it came out to like 110 rooms over the course of a year worldwide.
Yeah. And so 110 rooms is supposed to make up for all the profits and all the damage that is being done by looking a blind eye, not training the employees properly, and not the franchisors not supervising the franchisees properly. And it's almost like a drug-free zone, or like a teacher who has child pornography on his computer at school. Of course, there's a policy in place to say don't do this or whatever, but that doesn't mean that it's not being done and that people aren't being damaged and people aren't being hurt.
And there's the two layers that we're talking about. So you've got the local hotel that is visually seeing what's going on.
Yes.
But then the franchisor wants to know, well, how we're responsible for it. Well, how are they responsible for it? Because they know or should know about their occupancy rates and how many rooms are being rented for cash and how many rooms are being rented for more than one night in a motel that typically is just an overnight motel.
Yeah.
And all of those other indications that they have in terms of the credit card receipts and the cash deposits and the use of the ATMs and all of those other badges that are indications of just for the franchisor to know
Right.
that trafficking is going on.
Yeah.
So that's how we're holding them responsible
Yeah,
as
I mean,
well.
and they have the metrics. I mean, these hotels and motels. I mean, they're going to be counting just about everything from the number of times bed sheets have to be washed
Absolutely.
to cash deposits to in and outs of rooms. I mean, there's all kinds of metrics these hotels and motels are running, but yet at the same time, like that's what your red flag is. It's like, why is this hotel with occupancy of X has exorbitant amount of cash deposits coming in? Or, why is this, all these different metrics, and those are the red flags that they should be looking for, and calling out the franchisees and saying, hey, you need to be doing this right. And that's not happening.
That's right.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just a continuing challenge to find ways to go after them and everything else. And it's just, particularly when you have I sometimes in my naivety through the last few months is just fallen like crazy, because you probably raised a lot the same way I was, a decent family home, you got mom and dad around, you got a good family support atmosphere. Some of the things that's going through is it's horrible and terrible, and it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's really sad, and so many of these victims began being victimized by their own families.
Yeah.
I don't know what we can do about that here.
Yeah.
But that's where they become opened up to being subject to being victimized later on as they become teenagers and adults.
Yeah. And I think almost because we were involved in the opioid litigation, and it's often on my mind a lot, is like, I see a parallel with, kind of the uptick in the opioids and the pharmaceutical companies, shoveling out these opioids and then people becoming addicted, and then now children are being trafficked. I mean, I think it's not a stretch to think that there's some type of nexus or some connection there, right?
Well, we do have a client whose mother was an addict, and that's why she was trafficking her for the money to live on.
Yeah, she's pimping out her daughter for drugs, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an insane situation, and so, yeah, I mean, just because I think what I'd love for people to take away is that just because you had a bad history, just because you had criminal convictions, just because you're in a bad situation and been around bad people, that doesn't mean that you don't have a case, and that these traffickers can't be held responsible for what they're doing.
And there's resources out there now for them. I
Yeah.
mean, just what's opened my eyes since I've been working with your firm is just how many other resources there are available for these people, and how many good people are out there trying to help them too.
Yeah,
so.
there's a lot of great places close by. Place of Hope is here in Stewart, and we've networked with a number of the Tim Tebow Foundation. We've been working with them. There's just a number of great organizations out there that really kind of help understand this, because it's such a complex issue that it's not just as easy as getting somebody therapy and a place to live. It requires a lot more than that.
Oh yeah.
So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on this podcast. It is the Walker Way. It's episode 8. We're just having a great conversation here with regards to human trafficking and how we can find ways to eliminate that. If you or a loved one has ever been trafficked, don't hesitate to give us a call. We have a confidential phone number, 772-238-5522. Again, that's 772-238-5522. There's a national human trafficking hotline, 1-888-373-7888, 1-888-373-7888. Don't hesitate to reach out to help or find some way to do it. Give us a call. See if we can help you out. Thank you so much.